Most people are running a race they never agreed to. They wake up, rush to work, collect a paycheck, and call that freedom. But here's the truth. If your income stops and your life collapses, that's not freedom. That's captivity in disguise. Financial freedom isn't about earning more. It's about designing a life that earns for you. And the good news is, you can build that life in just 5 years. If you think rich, build assets, and stay disciplined long enough for your habits to outwork your excuses. We all want comfort, but comfort has a cost, sometimes the most expensive one, because comfort often trades long-term freedom for short-term relief. You see, most people don't fail because they aim too high and miss. They fail because they aim too low and hit. Financial freedom is not about luck or timing or even talent. It's about choosing discomfort today so you can buy peace tomorrow. And if you're willing to think rich, build assets, and stay disciplined for 5 short years, you'll live the rest of your life on your own terms. You know, most people think freedom starts with a number in the bank. They say, when I earn a little more, I'll finally breathe. When I have a cushion, I'll feel secure. But here's what I learned the hard way. Financial freedom doesn't begin in your bank account. It begins in your philosophy. You can give a man $10,000, and if he still thinks like a broke man, he'll lose it. But give another man $10 and the right mindset, and he'll find a way to multiply it. That's the difference between survival and stewardship. When I was broke and working odd jobs, I used to think money was my only problem. I'd tell myself, if I could just make a little more, I'd be fine. But I soon discovered that even when I made more, I still ended up in the same place. Empty pockets, anxious mind. That's when my mentor looked me in the eye and said something that changed my life. He said, you don't have a money problem, you have a thinking problem. And he was right. My paycheck had changed, but my habits, my beliefs, my philosophy, those were still poor. The truth is, financial freedom isn't a destination, it's a mindset. You have to shift from thinking like a consumer to thinking like a creator. Most people live in reaction. They earn, they spend, and they repeat the cycle. They think about survival, not growth. But once you start seeing money as a tool to buy time, to create choices, to build something meaningful, everything changes. You stop chasing and start designing. You stop saying, I can't afford it, and start asking, how can I afford it? One closes the mind, the other opens it. So here's where it begins. Write down your financial why. Don't say, I want to be rich. Ask yourself why you want freedom. Is it to spend more time with your family, to give generously without worry, to stop trading your time for a wage? When your goal has a reason, your discipline has fuel. I remember writing my own why on a little piece of paper. To never have to say no to opportunity because of money. I carried it in my pocket for years, and every time I felt tempted to give up, that reminder pulled me back to focus. Start today by studying wealth, not from headlines or gossip, but from people who've built it quietly and wisely. Read a few pages daily, listen to an idea that stretches your thinking, and surround yourself with examples of stewardship, not just spending. Because wealth doesn't start when you get your first investment. It starts when you stop thinking like you're broke. The mind is the factory of every fortune, and freedom begins when you decide to think rich long before you ever become it. You can't change your destination overnight, but you can absolutely change your direction today. Most people look at where they are financially and feel stuck as if the future is already written. But that's never true. Your financial future isn't determined by what you have, it's determined by what you decide. I remember the first time I realized that. I was broke, frustrated, and blaming everything but myself, the economy, the company, even the weather. My mentor stopped me mid-sentence and said, "You can't start at the top of the mountain, but you can start climbing today." That sentence hit me like a brick because it meant I didn't need to fix my life overnight. I just needed to face the right direction and take the next right step. Here's the great paradox of success. Small changes, done consistently, create enormous results. We often underestimate what we can do in 5 years and overestimate what we can do in a week. People want instant transformation, and when it doesn't happen, they quit. But you don't plant a seed today and expect fruit tomorrow. You plant, water, nurture, and wait. And one day, you look up and realize the garden has grown. That's what wealth is. The result of disciplined planting, not impulsive hoping. 5 years is enough time to rewrite your financial story if you start today with clarity. First, decide what financial freedom actually means to you. Not someone else's version, yours. How much do you need to live comfortably? To have time and to choose your own days. That's your financial freedom number. Write it down. Make it tangible. Because a goal without a number is just a wish. And wishes don't build wealth, plans do. Once you have that number, break it down, divide it by 5 years, then by 12 months. Suddenly, the impossible becomes measurable. If you want to build a business, how much must it earn monthly to reach that goal? If you're investing, how much must you contribute consistently? You'll find that success often hides behind simple math, not magic, just arithmetic and discipline. I used to tell people, don't count the years, count the habits. Because habits, not hopes, create the future. Then every 90 days, review your progress. Sit down like a board meeting for your own life. Ask, am I on track? Am I growing? What needs adjusting? When you treat your financial life like a business, it starts behaving like one. Productive, efficient, profitable. And if you fall behind, don't quit. Just correct your course. Ships don't travel in a straight line across the ocean. They adjust constantly, guided by direction, not perfection. 5 years will pass whether you plan or not. The question is, will you drift or will you design? The time is going to move anyway, so you might as well move with purpose. Change your direction today, and you'll change your destination tomorrow. There's a simple truth about money that most people never learn. It's not what you earn that makes you rich, it's what you keep and how you use it. I've met people who made fortunes and lost them, and others who earned modestly but lived in quiet abundance. The difference wasn't in the size of their paycheck, it was in the discipline of their habits. Discipline is the bridge between dreams and freedom. Without it, even great opportunities slip away. With it, even small beginnings can grow into something remarkable. When I was a young man, I thought the answer to my financial struggles was a bigger income. If I could just make a little more, I'd tell myself. I'd finally get ahead, but every time I made more, somehow I spent more. My mentor smiled one day and said, "If you can't live well on what you have now, you won't live well on more." That was a wake-up call. He showed me a simple formula. Live on 70% of what you earn and let the other 30% work for your future. It sounded impossible at first, but it was the key that unlocked everything. See, the 70% is for living, your rent, food, bills, comfort. It's enough to live decently. But the magic is in the remaining 30%. Divide it into 3 parts. 10% for investment, 10% for education, and 10% for generosity. That's what builds balance in your financial life. The 10% you invest becomes your wealth engine, the foundation of your freedom. It's money sent out to work for you while you sleep. The 10% for education is your growth engine. Books, courses, seminars, mentors, anything that increases your value and decision-making power. Because the smarter you get, the better your investments and your income become, And that last 10%, generosity, that's your soul engine. It reminds you that money is meant to flow, not just to you, but through you. Giving keeps greed in check and gratitude alive. Now, people often say, but I can't save or invest yet. My expenses take everything. I understand. I've been there. But here's what I learned. If you can't set aside 10% when you make a little, you won't do it when you make a lot. The habit must come first, not the amount. Start small, even if it's a single dollar. The goal isn't perfection, it's consistency. And the best way to stay consistent is automation. Don't wait for willpower, set systems. Automate your transfers the moment income arrives. When money moves before you can touch it, discipline becomes effortless. The beautiful thing about this formula is that it teaches balance, restraint, and growth all at once. You enjoy today while preparing for tomorrow. You grow in wisdom while growing your wealth. And most importantly, you learn to master your money instead of letting it master you. Remember, the real measure of wealth isn't how much you earn, it's how well you manage what you have. Live on 70%, grow with 30%, and one day you'll look back and realize you built your freedom one disciplined decision at a time. There comes a point in life when you must make a powerful decision. The decision to stop trading hours for dollars and start letting your money work harder than you do. Most people spend their lives in a cycle of labor. They work, they earn, they spend, and then they work again. It's a treadmill that looks like progress but leads nowhere. The truth is, financial freedom doesn't happen when you earn more. It happens when you own more, when your assets begin to do the heavy lifting for you. I learned this lesson the same way most people do, through exhaustion. There was a time when I was working as hard as I could, putting in long hours, always busy, always chasing the next paycheck. One evening, my mentor asked, "How long could you live if you stopped working today?" I thought about it and I didn't like the answer. Maybe a week, maybe two. That's when he said something I'll never forget. You'll never be free until your money starts working when you don't. That changed everything. See, money is meant to serve you, not enslave you. The rich understand that dollars are employees, not trophies. They put each one to work in a business, in real estate, in stocks, in systems that generate income even while they sleep. The poor, on the other hand, spend every dollar the moment it arrives, firing their best workers before they've done a single day's work. You have to start thinking like an owner. Each asset you acquire, a rental property, a dividend-paying stock, a small side business, a book, a course, is an employee in your financial team. And like any good leader, your job is to make sure those employees are productive. Start simple. Make it your goal to acquire one cash-flowing asset each year. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to move you closer to freedom. Maybe you buy your first share of a company. Maybe you launch a small online product. Maybe you buy equipment that produces income. The point isn't size, it's movement. The first asset will teach you the mindset. The second will teach you systems. And by the third, you'll start to see the compounding effect. And here's the secret. Don't spend the returns. Reinvest them. Let your money multiply before you ever consume it. That's how wealth grows quietly, powerfully, and relentlessly. The day your assets earn enough to pay your expenses, you become free. You may still choose to work, but it's because you want to, not because you have to. That's the goal. To buy your time back. To wake up when you're done sleeping. To choose projects for passion, not survival. Freedom is when your money stands guard at night, multiplying while you rest. Because the moment your money starts working harder than you do, you've crossed the line from making a living to building a life. One of the greatest lessons I ever learned is this: you don't get paid for time, you get paid for value. Time is equal for everyone, value is not. Two people can work the same 8 hours, and walk away with vastly different rewards, not because one worked harder, but because one worked smarter. You see, the marketplace doesn't respond to your need, it responds to your value. If you want to make more, the first question to ask is not, how can I earn more? But how can I become more valuable? Because income is a reflection, a mirror, showing what the market believes you're worth. Change the reflection, and the income changes with it. I remember a time in my 20s when I was working hard but going nowhere. I kept thinking that if I just put in more hours, things would turn around. But more hours didn't help. They only made me tired. Then my mentor said, you're working hard on your job, but are you working hard on yourself? That hit me like a thunderbolt. I realized I was trading time for money, but never trading time for growth. The moment I started improving my skills, everything began to shift. Let me tell you, the market pays for excellence, not effort. Identify one skill, just one, that, if mastered, could completely change your financial trajectory. It might be communication, sales, negotiation, leadership, or technology. Choose one and make it your obsession for a year. Study for an hour every day. Read, listen, practice. Do that for 5 years, and you'll be in the top 5% of your field. Remember, you can't compete with people who practice daily. You can only admire them from a distance or join them through discipline. I once met a man who made more in 1 month than he used to make in a year, all because he learned the art of persuasion. Another built wealth by mastering systems that multiplied his efficiency. The difference between scarcity and abundance is often just one skill. That's how the rich think. They don't wish for more money. They build the capacity to attract it. Because money flows naturally to value, just as water flows downhill. Once you've built that skill, use it. Start a side business. Offer your expertise. Add more value to your current work than you're paid for. It's a universal law. When you do more than you're paid to do, soon you'll be paid more than you do. Don't wait for opportunity to come find you. Grow until opportunity can't ignore you. So, stop counting hours and start cultivating value. Become someone whose presence solves problems, whose work creates results, and whose growth never stops. When you multiply your value, the world can't help but reward you, because the marketplace always finds its way to excellence. One of the greatest financial tragedies in life is that people spend decades working for money, yet never take the time to learn how it really works. They play the game blindfolded and wonder why they keep losing. The truth is simple. In the game of money, the uninformed always pay the informed. Financial ignorance costs more than any tax, any inflation, or any bad investment. It's the quiet thief that robs people of freedom while they're too busy earning to notice. I remember the early years when I was broke, working long hours, thinking that hard work alone was enough. I didn't know where my money was going or what it was doing after it left my hands. My mentor once asked, "Do you know what your money does when you're asleep?" I said, "No." He smiled and replied, "That's why it keeps leaving you." That was the moment I realized that money obeys the rules of the informed. It flows toward those who understand it and away from those who don't. So I began studying the game. I started small, a book on personal finance, another on investing, then one on economics. At first it was confusing. I didn't understand all the terms or charts, but I stayed consistent. 1 page a day, one principle at a time. Over months and years, my understanding grew, and so did my confidence. You see, when you learn the language of money, you stop being intimidated by it. You start to see patterns, opportunities, and dangers that others miss. Suddenly, money stops being a mystery and starts becoming a tool. Here's what I learned. Money moves like energy. It flows toward clarity and purpose. The people who study how it moves, multiplies, and hides protect themselves from the traps that catch everyone else. The wealthy don't just save, they understand how taxes can erode earnings, how inflation silently steals purchasing power, and how markets create opportunities through cycles. That's why they make strategic decisions instead of emotional ones. They don't react, they plan. Start by committing to a simple rule: read one book about money every month. Not entertainment, not gossip, education. Learn about investing, about assets, about how wealth is preserved and multiplied. Follow mentors who live what they teach, not just those who talk about it. You don't need to know everything, just enough to make informed decisions. Every new piece of knowledge sharpens your financial instincts, and soon you'll realize you're not guessing anymore, you're playing with understanding. And that's when the game changes. Because once you understand the rules, you no longer have to play defense. You start playing offense. You stop working for money and start letting money work for you. The game of money is not about luck, it's about learning. And the day you decide to become a student of wealth, that's the day you stop paying the price of ignorance and start earning the rewards of wisdom. Let me tell you something that most people never realize. A paycheck only feeds you for a week, maybe a month if you're lucky, but it will never make you free. You can work harder, earn more, but as long as you trade hours for dollars, freedom remains a distant dream. True financial independence comes from cash flow, money that flows to you consistently, whether you work, sleep, or travel. A paycheck is temporary. Cash flow is permanent. That's the difference between surviving and thriving. I remember early in my career, I was working multiple jobs, clocking long hours, and thinking that a bigger paycheck was the answer. I calculated my monthly income, and even when it increased slightly, I felt no richer. I was still living paycheck to paycheck. Then a mentor asked me, "What works while you're asleep?" I paused. I realized my money was just sitting there, obediently following me, but never working for me. That question changed everything. From that moment, I shifted my focus from simply earning to creating systems that generated cash flow. The first step was small. I invested in dividend-paying stocks. Every month, I received money that didn't require me to punch a clock. It wasn't much at first, but it was steady, reliable, and growing. Then I explored other income streams, renting a property, creating a small product, and later royalties from ideas I had written down. Each new stream was a small river that eventually became a wider current, and together they started feeding my freedom, not just my immediate needs. The principle is simple. Don't just work for money, make money work for you. Every dollar you earn should have a job. Some for living expenses, some for growth, some for education, but the most powerful portion is what generates income while you're not actively working. Cash flow compounds in a way that a paycheck never can. It builds momentum, creates options, and eventually replaces the need to trade time for money altogether. To make this practical, start with one new income stream per year. It could be as simple as dividend stocks, a small online business, rental property, or creating intellectual property. Automate reinvestments so your money grows without constant attention. Track your cash flow monthly. What gets measured grows. And awareness ensures you're not just earning, but multiplying. As these streams accumulate, you'll notice something extraordinary. Your wealth begins to detach from your labor, giving you the freedom you've always desired. Remember, a paycheck feeds your present, but cash flow feeds your future. Focus there, and your financial independence becomes inevitable. Let me start with the truth most people overlook. Your discipline is more valuable than any paycheck, any investment, or any opportunity you'll ever encounter. Money comes and goes, markets rise and fall, but discipline Consistent, deliberate, daily discipline compounds over time, creating results that feel almost magical. I've seen it in my own life. Early on, I had little money, a modest job, and a stack of bills taller than my confidence. I realized that if I wanted freedom, I couldn't rely on luck or a sudden windfall. I had to rely on habits I could control. I began with small daily rituals. Every morning, I reviewed my spending from the day before. I planned investments, set aside money for growth, and tracked even the smallest wins and losses. At first, it felt tedious. I was tempted to skip days, to rationalize that missing one or two wouldn't matter, but I quickly saw the opposite. Every skipped day was a little crack in the foundation of my future freedom. A small habit practiced every day outweighs a grand effort done occasionally. Discipline also means protecting yourself from financial distractions. In those early years, friends would talk about must-have purchases, flashy gadgets, or the latest trends. The temptation was strong. I remember longing for a fancy watch while I was still struggling to pay my rent. But I paused and asked, does this move me closer to freedom, or is it just feeding an impulse? That question saved me from countless decisions that would have derailed my plan. The wealthy understand that impulsive spending is the enemy of long-term independence. Rewarding discipline is important too, but not with indulgence. Discipline feeds purpose, not pleasure. I learned to celebrate milestones by reinvesting, by learning, by improving systems, never by splurging on fleeting gratification. Over time, these small choices stacked into a rhythm that became unstoppable. My habits created a momentum that even money had to respect. I went from barely scraping by to having assets that worked for me while I slept, all because I protected my discipline like it was the most valuable thing I owned. Remember, opportunity alone is fleeting. Talent alone is insufficient. What separates those who achieve freedom from those who remain trapped is simple: the consistency of their actions day in and day out. Guard your habits. Protect your discipline. It is your greatest asset, and when nurtured, it will deliver the freedom and wealth you seek. Let me tell you something most people miss. Financial freedom isn't a prize waiting at the end of a finish line. It isn't a single number in a bank account or a moment when all your bills are paid off. True freedom is a lifestyle, a way of thinking, acting, and living every single day. I've met people who arrived financially yet were still enslaved by habits, fears, and distractions. They had money, but no mastery. Freedom begins the moment you adopt behaviors that align with wealth, discipline, and growth, and continue practicing them until they become part of who you are. When I was building my first real business, I realized that just earning more wouldn't set me free. Freedom came when I stopped chasing money for its own sake and started practicing wealth behaviors daily, tracking my spending, investing consistently, learning constantly, and giving back where I could. Each habit was like a brick in the foundation of my life. It didn't matter that my income was modest at first. The habits themselves were building freedom long before the bank balance reflected it. Gratitude is one of the most powerful behaviors. Appreciating what you have opens your mind to opportunity and abundance. I would start each day reflecting on what was already working, no matter how small. That simple act changed my perspective. Instead of feeling lacking, I felt resourceful and capable. Abundance grows where it's appreciated. And when you focus on gratitude, you naturally make wiser financial decisions. Teaching is another cornerstone of freedom. Whenever I share what I've learned with someone else, the lessons become sharper and more deeply ingrained. I mentor young professionals, guide family members, and even share ideas with friends. Each time, I see my understanding deepen. Knowledge becomes more than information. It becomes action, confidence, and freedom that compounds. Finally, learning and growth are not just tools, they are lifestyles. Even when I had success, I kept reading, listening, and studying. Each new skill, each insight, each experience reinforced my independence. Freedom isn't achieved once and forgotten. It must be maintained. It's about creating a life where your habits, mindset, and choices reflect wealth, not just your account balance. Remember this, financial freedom is not a destination, it's a daily practice. Live it, breathe it, and it will grow within you, shaping every decision, every action, and every day of your life. Let me share a truth that most people miss. Money is not the target, it's the shadow of mastery. I've lived it, and I can tell you, the harder you chase money, the faster it runs away. Real wealth, lasting freedom, comes when you chase mastery, skill, excellence, and value creation. When you focus on being exceptional at something people deeply need, money will naturally follow. It is drawn to competence, reliability, and the solutions you bring. I remember early in my career, I was juggling multiple small jobs, trying to earn everything at once. I was exhausted, scattered, and barely saving a dime. Then I realized the lesson. Instead of chasing income from every direction, I needed to become truly exceptional at one thing. I picked a skill, sales, and I committed to mastering it. 1 hour every day, rain or shine, I studied, practiced, and improved. I sought feedback, learned from mistakes, and kept refining my craft. I wasn't counting dollars, I was counting progress. Over time, something remarkable happened. As my skill grew, income followed naturally. I didn't have to chase it. It arrived because I had something of value that people could not ignore. Clients came, opportunities appeared, and doors I didn't even know existed opened wide. Mastery attracts wealth silently but powerfully. Money becomes a reflection of your competence, not your desperation. The principle works in any field. Whether you want to dominate in business, writing, leadership, or innovation, the focus is the same. Excellence first, rewards second. Track your progress, measure your growth, and aim for improvement every single day. Small, consistent steps toward mastery compound faster than chasing scattered opportunities. It's not the hours you put in, it's the value you create during those hours. Remember, this is about patience and focus. Mastery takes time, often 5 years of consistent effort to reach a level where income flows effortlessly. But every hour invested compounds, like interest on a savings account you never touch. Money will follow the master, but never the chaser. So, don't chase money, chase mastery. Focus, practice, improve, and become indispensable. Wealth will find you quietly, powerfully, and sustainably. Let me tell you something most people never realize. The difference between the rich and the poor isn't luck, connections, or talent. It's time horizon. One group plans for decades, the other plans for Friday night. I've seen it in my own life and in countless others. People get caught up in the urgent, the paycheck, the dinner out, the latest gadget, while missing the powerful force of long-term planning. Wealth doesn't happen overnight. It's built slowly, steadily, intentionally, over years, even decades. Every small choice compounds when guided by a long-term vision. Early in my career, I was like most people thinking in weeks and months. I worried about bills, weekends, and short-term comforts. I was reactive, constantly adjusting to what life threw at me. Then I was introduced to the idea of a 10-year vision. I wrote down where I wanted to be financially, professionally, and personally a decade from then. I broke it into 5-year targets and yearly goals. And suddenly, my small daily decisions took on enormous meaning. Spending $1 frivolously no longer felt harmless. It was a tiny detour from my long-term freedom. Every choice was filtered through the lens of 10 years. When you plan decades ahead, everything changes. Your energy is spent on growth, not distraction. You invest in skills that multiply your value, not in fleeting pleasures. You build assets that compound over time, rather than hoard cash for comfort. I started saving in a disciplined way, but not just money. My focus, my learning, my habits became capital for the future. I ask myself every month, will this action matter 10 years from now? Sometimes the answer was no, and I shifted. Other times, yes, and I committed fully. The 10-year mindset also protects against impatience. Life will challenge you. Markets fluctuate, opportunities stall, and setbacks happen. Short-term thinkers give up. Long-term planners endure. They understand that temporary discomfort is the price of permanent freedom. I remember early setbacks in my investments and business ventures. If I had focused only on immediate returns, I would have quit. But my eyes were on the decade horizon, and so I persisted. The results came, not fast, but powerful, lasting, and compounding. So, think like the wealthy. Plan in decades, not days. Let your decisions be guided by long-term vision, not fleeting urges. Write your 10-year wealth vision, break it down into actionable milestones, and pass every decision through the 10-year test. The freedom you seek is born in patience, not impulse. Let me tell you something I've learned from watching people struggle and succeed. Most of us are trained to consume, not to create. From the moment we earn our first paycheck, we're conditioned to spend it on things that give comfort, status, or a temporary thrill. The problem is, every dollar spent on consumption disappears. It's gone. It gives a brief smile and leaves you empty-handed. I've seen people make $5,000 a month and still feel poor, simply because every penny went to things that vanish. Gadgets, dinners out, fleeting pleasures. Meanwhile, someone earning half that, who directs even a portion of their money toward creation, builds lasting wealth quietly, steadily, and powerfully. Creation is different. Creation multiplies. It can be a business, a skill, an investment, a piece of intellectual property, anything that takes your money, time, or energy and transforms it into future growth. Early in my career, I made a small habit change. I asked myself, before I buy this, does it create value or just consume my resources? I started replacing half of my casual spending with creation. Books that taught me about sales and business, tools to improve my skills, small investments that would grow over time. It felt strange at first because pleasure is immediate while creation is delayed gratification. But the results were undeniable. That small habit became a financial habit. My money started working for me rather than me working just to spend it. The philosophy is simple. Wealth isn't built by spending on fleeting pleasures. It's built by redirecting consumption into production. Every dollar can either feed your desire for comfort now or feed your freedom later. When you make this shift, your mindset changes too. You stop measuring success by what you own today and start measuring it by what you create for tomorrow. You become more intentional with your decisions, and your life begins to compound, not just financially, but in knowledge, skills, and influence. So I challenge you, the next time you reach for your wallet, pause. Ask yourself, am I consuming or am I creating? Replace a portion of your spending with something that builds your future. Invest in tools, skills, or assets that will pay back in ways money alone cannot. Measure your joy not by what you own, but by what you make possible. Turn consumption into creation, and you'll find wealth growing silently, steadily, and surely around you. Wealth begins not by buying more, but by building more. Debt is a curious thing. It can be a ladder to freedom or a chain that drags you down. Early in my journey, I saw people trapped not by lack of money, but by mismanaged debt. They borrowed to impress, to chase status, to buy things that disappeared the moment the credit card bill arrived. The tragedy is that debt feels like a tool. It feels empowering, but when it's used for consumption instead of creation, it becomes a trap. I've learned the hard way and observed countless others that financial freedom begins when you master debt, not when you avoid it blindly. The philosophy is simple. Debt itself isn't evil. It's the purpose behind it that determines its impact. Borrowed money can multiply if it's directed towards something that grows in value, something that generates income, something that builds assets. Conversely, debt spent on fleeting pleasures robs you of your future silently and efficiently. I remember my early days when I had a small loan to invest in a course that taught me sales and business fundamentals. That loan didn't just pay back itself, it paid back exponentially by increasing my earning capacity. That's the difference between debt used wisely and debt used carelessly. The strategy is straightforward but requires discipline. First, eliminate all consumer debt as quickly as possible. Credit card balances, personal loans, car loans, for luxury vehicles, they all erode your capacity to grow. I've seen people earn six figures and still feel broke simply because their cash went to servicing debt, not building freedom. The moment you pay off these obligations, you reclaim your ability to direct money toward creation. Second, leverage only what multiplies income. Real estate, business expansion, or investments that return more than the cost of borrowing are legitimate uses of debt. Everything else is a trap dressed in a shiny package. Practical steps matter as much as philosophy. Commit to eliminating consumer debt within a specific timeline, like 12 months. Review your credit and liabilities quarterly, asking yourself if each liability contributes to growth or consumes potential. Use debt only when it aligns with measurable goals and projected returns. I learned that reviewing every obligation, questioning every payment, and being ruthless with purpose turns borrowed money from a source of stress into a tool for freedom. Debt, when mastered, accelerates your journey. Debt, when ignored or misused, enslaves you. The key lies in awareness, purpose, and control. Treat borrowed money as a servant, not a master, and you'll discover that the right debt can be an ally in building lasting wealth. Master your debt, and you master your future. I remember early in my career working long hours for someone else, thinking that a paycheck was the finish line. I was earning, yes, but I wasn't building freedom. Most people stop there. They see their job as a cage or a final destination. But here's the truth. Your paycheck is only the beginning. It's a tool, a capital source, a stepping stone towards something much bigger. You can earn like an employee and live like one, or you can earn like an employee and think like an entrepreneur. The difference is how you use the money and the mindset you apply. Philosophically, freedom begins when you realize that trading hours for dollars alone will never create true wealth. Time is finite, and a paycheck stops when the workday ends. But ideas, systems, and investments can generate returns long after you clock out. The employee mentality says, I earn, I spend, I survive. The entrepreneurial mentality asks, how can I use what I earn to create more value, more income, more freedom? One produces security, the other produces independence. I've seen people with modest salaries achieve financial freedom in 5 years because they treated every paycheck as seed money for growth. The strategy is to shift perspective. See your job as a reliable inflow of capital rather than a permanent life sentence. Use that inflow strategically to fund investments, side projects, and personal growth. Treat 20% of your income not as spending money, but as an investment in your future. Think in terms of leverage. How can a single dollar or a single hour invested today return tenfold tomorrow? Your paycheck becomes a tool, not a master, and your mind becomes the real engine of wealth. Practical steps are surprisingly simple but require discipline. Second, constantly ask yourself, how can I multiply what I earn? Every small decision matters. Investing in a course that improves your skills, testing a side business, or buying an income-producing asset. Third, adopt the mindset of an entrepreneur daily. Look for opportunities, study markets, and observe how money grows when directed intelligently. Even while you work full-time for someone else, your mind and resources are building freedom in the background. I started small, reinvesting a fraction of my modest earnings into skills and projects. Over time, these small, consistent choices multiplied into financial independence. Remember, it's not just the money you earn, it's what your mind does with it. Earn like an employee, but always think like an entrepreneur. And you'll discover freedom is created long before the last paycheck arrives. Let me leave you with this truth. Financial freedom isn't a distant dream reserved for the lucky or the privileged. It's a practice, a discipline, a mindset that begins the moment you decide to take control of your money, your time, and your life. The people who achieve wealth in 5 years aren't the ones who earn the most. They are the ones who think differently, act strategically, and stay disciplined day after day. They live below their means, invest in assets that work for them, multiply their value, and treat every paycheck as a stepping stone toward freedom. Today, I challenge you to stop being a passive participant in your financial story. Write down your why. Define your financial freedom number. And break it into actionable steps. Automate your savings. Invest in yourself. Create income-producing assets. And guard your habits like they are gold. Every small, consistent action compounds over time.